In World War II, survival was not always about firepower. Sometimes it was about staying invisible, mobile, and convincing enough to exist without ever being engaged. The so-called phantom units, best known through Allied deception formations such as the Ghost Army, operated under conditions where discovery meant immediate collapse of the mission. Their equipment was therefore stripped down, multifunctional, and designed to support short, intense deployments behind a carefully constructed illusion. What emerged was a survival pack, unlike standard infantry gear, built not to fight, but to endure, move, and disappear. Why phantom units required a different survival philosophy? Conventional soldiers carried gear meant for sustained combat. Phantom units carried gear meant for rapid setup, controlled exposure, and sudden withdrawal. Their survival depended on speed, misdirection, and self-sufficiency in austere environments. These units often worked at night, near front lines, and in terrain that offered little margin for error. The survival pack reflected this reality. Every item had to earn its place by serving more than one purpose. How weight discipline shaped every decision. The Phantom unit pack was deliberately light. Heavy rations, spare clothing, and redundant tools were removed. Instead, soldiers carried compact food, minimal water containers, and items that could be scavenged or improvised upon arrival. This allowed them to move quickly between deception sites and avoid leaving tracks that would betray unit size or direction. Modern survivalists can learn from this discipline by prioritizing function over comfort. If an item does only one thing and cannot support concealment or endurance, it likely does not belong. Now, let's talk a bit about what food and water looked like in a deception unit pack. The food was, well, dense and quiet. Hard biscuits, compressed rations and chocolate were favoured because, you see, they required no cooking and produced no smell or light. Water was usually carried in small canteens, and often this was supplemented by purification tablets rather than relying on bulk storage. Fires, you know, were avoided whenever possible. This approach, interestingly enough, mirrors modern minimalist survival strategies. The idea was to carry calories, not cuisine. And always the plan was to move rather than settle. Now, you might be wondering why fire-making tools were present but, well, rarely used. Phantom unit packs did contain fire-starting tools, but their use was quite restricted. Things like waxed paper starters, matches sealed in wax, and flint kits were included, but strictly for emergencies only. After all, fire meant smoke, smell and light, all of which could easily compromise deception. The lesson here is restraint. Survival equipment is not meant to be used constantly, but, well, precisely. How shelter was handled without tents. Tents were rarely carried. Instead, soldiers relied on ponchos, camouflage netting, and terrain. These items served multiple roles, acting as rain protection, concealment, and visual deception. A poncho could become a shelter, ground cloth, or cover for equipment. Modern users can apply this by choosing adaptable shelter systems that blend with the environment and avoid rigid structures. Now, let's talk about why medical supplies were, well, minimal but quite specific. Phantom unit medical kits were small, but they were very focused. Bandages, antiseptic and blister care always took priority over trauma supplies. The main goal, honestly, was to remain mobile, not to treat battlefield wounds. Any injury that slowed movement, you see, threatened the entire mission. This really highlights a survival truth that's often overlooked. Preventing small injuries actually matters more than treating catastrophic ones, especially when extraction is, unlikely. Let's consider how navigation tools replaced brute force. Maps, compasses, and a solid knowledge of the terrain were more valuable than weapons, truly. Phantom unit survival depended on knowing exactly where to be and when, often in complete darkness. Getting lost, in fact, was more dangerous than ever actually encountering the enemy. For modern survivalists, navigation remains foundational. Tools are useful, but familiarity with terrain is irreplaceable. Why weapons were present but secondary? Weapons were carried but often lighter than standard issue. They were defensive tools, not primary solutions. The goal was evasion, not engagement. Ammunition loads were reduced to preserve weight and mobility. This reinforces a key principle. Survival favors avoidance over confrontation. How deception equipment doubled as survival gear. Inflatable tanks, sound equipment and decoy materials were not just mission assets. They also provided cover, insulation, and even morale support. A decoy structure could block wind or conceal movement. Sound equipment masked real activity. This adaptability is instructive. Survival gear should never be single-purpose if it can be avoided. So, why did the Phantom Unit pack actually work? Well, the pack worked because, it respected reality. It was built on the assumption that there would be no resupply, no rescue, and really no margin for mistakes at all. It favoured quiet endurance over brute force. Every single item was chosen to support mobility, concealment, or self-reliance. Now, how does this knowledge apply today? For modern survivalists, emergency planners, and history enthusiasts alike, the Phantom Unit Survival Pack really does offer a model that's worth studying. Build kits that support movement, discretion, and adaptability. Strip away all the excess. And, perhaps most importantly, learn to rely on knowledge just as much as on equipment. So, why does this pack still matter? The Phantom units proved that survival isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's about discipline, careful planning, and a deep understanding of human perception. Their survival packs were, quite literally, tools of endurance in every sense of the word. If this exploration of wartime survival design has deepened your understanding of how history solved real problems under extreme pressure, do consider supporting Backyard Wisdom by subscribing, sharing this episode, and helping to preserve these practical lessons that remain so relevant long after the war ended.